I am Ethan, 27 years old, and I saved for months to book my dream Dubai vacation for $2,870. Yesterday, I arrived at Boston Logan Airport to discover my father had given my seat to my brother Marcus. My Aunt Catherine kept praising her genius CEO nephew despite his string of failures. When they tried using my credit cards for their expenses, I froze everything. The look on Marcus's face when his card was declined was priceless. You stranded us. He screamed across the terminal. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had a family member take advantage of your hard work. Growing up in suburban Boston, our family dynamic was crystal clear from the beginning. My father, Gerald, a moderately successful owner of a local construction company, had 2 sons, but only seemed to truly see one of us. My younger brother Marcus, 3 years my junior, was the golden child from the moment he could talk. Even when we were kids, the pattern was obvious. Marcus would receive lavish birthday parties with dozens of guests, while mine were simple affairs with just immediate family. When Marcus joined the baseball team, Dad never missed a game. When I made the debate team and went to state finals, he was too busy with work. Our mother Elizabeth had been the balancing force in our home. She noticed the favoritism and tried her best to compensate spending extra time with me when Dad was fawning over Marcus. I remember her whispering to me once, "Your father loves you both equally. He just doesn't know how to show it." Even then, at 11 years old, I knew she was trying to protect my feelings rather than stating a truth. Everything changed when Mom died of cancer when I was 15. The loss devastated our family, but it affected each of us differently. I channeled my grief into responsibility, focusing intensely on school and taking on part-time jobs. Marcus, however, became even more dependent on Dad's attention and financial support. And Dad, perhaps seeing my mother in me, became even more distant. My Aunt Catherine, Dad's sister, stepped in to fill the maternal void, but brought her own toxic influence. She was obsessed with status and appearances, constantly talking about her country club friends and their successful children. In Catherine's world, your worth was measured by your job title and income. She latched onto Marcus, immediately declaring him a born entrepreneur when he was still in high school, selling overpriced candy to classmates. College was my escape. I worked 3 jobs: campus bookstore during weekdays, waiting tables on evenings and weekend shifts at a local tech repair shop, to put myself through Massachusetts State University. I lived off ramen and coffee, studied, until my eyes burned and graduated with honors in computer science. Not once did my father offer financial help, though he paid for Marcus's business degree at a private university where my brother spent more time partying than studying. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at TechVision Solutions, a respected software company in downtown Boston. I shared a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, took the bus to work every day, and slowly climbed the corporate ladder. Within 5 years, I had been promoted 3 times, finally reaching a senior developer position with a comfortable salary and benefits. Meanwhile, Marcus's post-college life was a series of entrepreneurial ventures, each more disastrous than the last. First came FitFuel, a protein shake delivery service that folded after 3 months when Marcus couldn't manage inventory or delivery schedules. Dad invested $20,000 in that one. Next was Nightlife Now, an app for finding club promotions that never made it past the design phase despite Dad's $15,000 investment. The pattern continued. Marcus would come up with a half-baked business idea, Dad would fund it, and within months the money would vanish with nothing to show for it. Through all of this, I maintained a relationship with my family out of a sense of duty. Sunday dinners at Dad's house became a predictable theater. Marcus would announce his latest game-changing business idea, Aunt Catherine would fawn over his visionary thinking, and Dad would beam with pride. I would sit quietly, picking at my food, occasionally fielding questions about my little computer job. The fact that I had actual career advancement, savings, and stability seemed to count for nothing. After years of hard work and careful budgeting, I finally had enough savings for something special. Dubai had been on my dream destination list since college, when a professor showed slides from his international conference there. The ultramodern architecture, the contrast of desert and luxury, the global melting pot of cultures, it all fascinated me. I researched for months, comparing packages, reading reviews, and planning an itinerary that would let me experience everything from the Burj Khalifa to desert safaris. When I finally booked the trip, a premium package for $2,870, it represented more than just a vacation. It was a symbol of my independence and success achieved entirely through my own efforts. I mentioned the upcoming trip at a Sunday dinner, not to brag but simply sharing my excitement. Dad nodded absently while Marcus scrolled through his phone. Only Aunt Catherine seemed to register the information, asking pointed questions about the cost and accommodations. As the departure date approached, my excitement grew. I bought new luggage, weather-appropriate clothes, and a high-quality camera. I created a detailed itinerary with restaurant reservations and tour bookings. I even studied basic Arabic phrases to help navigate the city. The night before my flight, I was too excited to sleep, triple-checking my passport and documents. Little did I know that my carefully planned dream trip was about to become a nightmare of family betrayal. The evening before my scheduled departure to Dubai, Dad insisted on hosting a family dinner. "To wish you bon voyage," he said over the phone, though his tone lacked any real enthusiasm. I agreed, thinking it might be a small gesture of reconciliation, perhaps even a sign that he was finally proud of my achievements. I arrived at the familiar two-story colonial house where I grew up, to find Marcus's BMW already in the driveway alongside Aunt Catherine's Mercedes. Inside, the dining room table was set with the good china, a rarity reserved for special occasions. For a brief, naive moment, I thought perhaps they were genuinely celebrating my trip. Aunt Catherine air-kissed my cheeks, wafting expensive perfume. "Ethan, darling, you look tired. Is that tech company working you too hard? You know, with your skills, you could start your own business like Marcus." Dad emerged from the kitchen carrying a roast, his signature dish since Mom died. "Perfect timing, son. Sit down, everyone." As we settled into dinner, Marcus cleared his throat dramatically. "So I have some news," he announced, swirling wine in his glass. Element X is officially winding down operations. Element X was Marcus's latest venture, a subscription box service for artisanal elements that was essentially overpriced samples of salt, mud, and rocks from exotic locations. Dad had invested $30,000 just 4 months ago. The market just wasn't ready for the concept, Marcus continued, as if he were discussing a minor setback rather than another complete failure. "But I already have my next big idea lined up. It's going to revolutionize the personal wellness space." I focused on cutting my meat, avoiding eye contact. Dad nodded thoughtfully, as if Marcus had just shared profound wisdom rather than the prelude to another financial disaster. "That's what makes you special," Marcus' Aunt Catherine gushed, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "You're a true risk-taker, a visionary. Not everyone has the courage to fail and try again. That's what separates entrepreneurs from, well, people who just work for someone else." She glanced meaningfully in my direction. Dad raised his glass. "To new beginnings and fresh perspectives. Sometimes a change of scenery is exactly what an entrepreneur needs to spark that million-dollar idea." Something in his tone made me look up. Dad and Marcus exchanged a glance that sent a chill down my spine. Aunt Catherine was smiling too broadly, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Speaking of scenery," Dad continued, turning to me with unusual interest. "Tell us more about this Dubai trip. Sounds quite elaborate." I described some highlights of my planned itinerary, growing increasingly uneasy as they listened with unusual attentiveness. When I mentioned the exclusive desert resort I had splurged on for 2 nights, Marcus whistled. "Fancy. Must be nice to blow money on yourself like that," he said. "It is not blowing money," I replied evenly. "It is investing in an experience I have worked hard for." Of course, Dad interjected smoothly. "You deserve it, Ethan. Though you know, sometimes I worry that Marcus never gets to catch a break or recharge his batteries. A creative mind needs stimulation, new environments." The implication hung in the air, but I was still too oblivious to see what was coming. We finished dinner with superficial conversation, and I left early, needing to finalize my packing. Dad hugged me goodbye with unexpected warmth. "Everything happens for a reason, son," he said cryptically. The next morning, I arrived at Logan International Airport 3 hours before my scheduled departure. My heart raced with excitement as I joined the check-in line for Emirates Airlines, rolling my carefully packed suitcase behind me. When I reached the counter, the attendant smiled professionally as she took my passport. "Mr. Ethan Reynolds," she confirmed, typing on her computer. Her smile faltered. "Oh, I see there's been a change in passenger information for this booking." "A change? That's impossible. I made this reservation myself months ago." She typed more, frowning slightly. "It shows the ticket was transferred to." She paused. "Marcus Reynolds. Is that you?" My blood ran cold. "No, that's my brother. There must be a mistake." "Sir, it shows the change was authorized yesterday evening using the account password. The new passenger has already checked in online." My mind raced back to dinner, to the strange exchanges and pointed questions. Had they somehow gotten my booking information? I was about to demand more details when I heard my name called. "Ethan. Over here." I turned to see my father Marcus and Aunt Catherine approaching, all pulling luggage. Marcus wore designer sunglasses and a smug smile. Catherine was dressed as if for a photo shoot, not a 14-hour flight. Dad looked uncomfortable, but determined. "What is going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking. Dad put his hand on my shoulder, speaking in the placating tone he used when explaining why he couldn't attend my college graduation. "Son, we made an executive decision as a family. Marcus really needs this opportunity right now. His business setback has hit him hard, and Dubai is full of investors and networking possibilities." Marcus nodded solemnly, though I could see the excitement he was barely containing. "This could be the game changer for my career, bro. All those connections, all that new money, looking for the next big thing." I stared at them in disbelief. "You stole my vacation, the one I saved for and planned for months." Aunt Catherine waved her manicured hand dismissively. "Don't be so dramatic, Ethan. It's just a leisure trip for you, but for Marcus, it's a business opportunity. You're just going to lie on beaches and take pictures of buildings. Marcus will be creating jobs, building a future. Besides," Dad added, not meeting my eyes, "you have a stable job. You can book another vacation anytime. Marcus needs this now." The full reality of the situation crashed over me. "You went into my account and changed my booking without my knowledge or permission. That's not an executive decision, that's fraud." Marcus rolled his eyes. Always the drama queen. "We're family. Family supports each other." "Support goes both ways," I said, my voice rising. "When's the last time any of you supported me?" "We're supporting you right now by including you in Marcus's success journey," Aunt Catherine said, as if she were bestowing a great honor upon me. "Once he makes his connections and secures funding, think how proud you'll be to have played a small part." I looked at her in confusion. "What are you talking about? Including me how?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Well, that's the other thing we need to discuss. Since this trip is now a business development opportunity, we thought it made sense for you to contribute to the expenses. Investment in the family future, so to speak." My stomach dropped. "What expenses?" Marcus chimed in. "Just the basics. Business dinners with potential investors, maybe upgrade to the hotel club level for networking, transportation to meetings." "And how exactly am I supposed to contribute to these expenses when I won't even be there?" Dad cleared his throat. "We added Marcus as an authorized user on your credit cards yesterday. Just temporarily, of course." I stared at my father in stunned disbelief. "You did what?" Now Ethan tried to see the bigger picture, Dad said, using his reasonable voice that always preceded an unreasonable request. "Marcus needs to make the right impression with these investors. He can't show up looking like he's on a budget. So you added him to my credit cards without my permission." I could hear my voice rising, drawing glances from nearby travelers. "That's not just crossing a line, Dad. That's illegal." Marcus stepped forward, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "Bro, chill out. It's just temporary. Once I secure funding, I'll pay you back 10 times over." I shrugged his hand off. "Like you paid back the $20,000 for Fit Fuel, or the $15,000 for that nightclub app, or the $30,000 for your rock subscription disaster. Those were legitimate business attempts," he snapped, his facade of casual confidence cracking. "This time is different. I've already made some charges for business attire and upgraded our seats to business class. It's an investment." You've already used my cards. I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app with shaking hands. The notification banner showed multiple transactions from the previous evening. $3,000 at Nordstrom, $2,000 at the airport, duty-free shops, and a $4,000 seat upgrade on Emirates Airlines. $9,000, I gasped. In one night. Aunt Catherine peered over my shoulder at the screen. That's actually quite reasonable for proper business preparation. And the seat upgrades are essential. Marcus needs to arrive well-rested to make his pitch to the Saudis tomorrow night. My head was spinning. What Saudis? What pitch? You don't even have a real business. That attitude right there is why you're stuck in middle management, Catherine sniffed. No vision, no belief. Marcus manifests his success because he believes in abundance. Dad stepped between us, clearly concerned about the scene we were creating. Ethan, we know this is a surprise, but try to be reasonable. Family supports family. Your brother needs this chance, and you're in a position to help. By having my vacation stolen, and my credit cards maxed out, that's not support, that's exploitation. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. How are you planning to pay for the rest of the trip? My cards have limits. Marcus and Dad exchanged glances. We thought Dad began carefully that since you've been so good with money, you probably have savings you could wire if needed. Just as a backup. Something inside me snapped. The lifetime of being overlooked, taken for granted, and now openly exploited, culminated in a moment of perfect clarity. Without a word, I opened my banking app again and began rapidly tapping through menus. What are you doing? Marcus asked, suddenly alert. Freezing all my cards, I replied calmly, continuing to tap through the security confirmations and changing all my passwords. Marcus lunged for my phone. You can't do that. We're about to board. I stepped back, holding the phone out of his reach. Watch me. Ethan Dad's voice took on the authoritative tone that used to make me shrink as a child. Stop this childish behavior immediately. Your brother needs these resources for legitimate business purposes. Then he can apply for his own credit like everyone else. I finished the final security confirmation. There, all cards frozen. The Emirates check-in agent, who had been watching our exchange with increasing concern, cleared her throat. Excuse me, but is there a problem with the booking? Before I could respond, Marcus thrust his passport and boarding pass at her. No problem at all. I'm Marcus Reynolds, and these are my traveling companions. We're checked in and ready to board. The agent nodded uncertainly. And will you be checking these bags? Yes, and please make sure they're priority tagged. We're in business class. Marcus turned to me with a triumphant smile. My phone pinged with a notification. Then another, and another. Marcus's smile faltered as his own phone began buzzing in his pocket. He pulled it out, his face draining of color as he read the screen. What did you do? He hissed. Like I said, I froze all my cards, including the ones you were added to yesterday. Dad grabbed his own phone, frantically tapping through screens. Ethan, the seat upgrades, the hotel reservations. They're all being declined. Aunt Catherine, who had been filming portions of our argument on her phone, presumably to paint me as the villain later, now lowered it slowly. You can't be serious. Do you know how this makes us look? Other travelers were indeed watching the unfolding drama, with undisguised interest. Some had even taken out their own phones. I don't care how it makes you look, I said quietly. I care about how you've treated me, like an ATM, not a family member. Marcus's face contorted with rage. You selfish, small-minded little. He took a step toward me, fists clenched. Sir. The check-in agent's voice cut through the tension. Please lower your voice and step back, or I'll need to call security. Marcus froze, visibly calculating how this would appear to the people around us. He took a deep breath and smoothed his designer jacket, attempting to regain composure. Ethan Dad tried again, his voice now pleading rather than commanding. Be reasonable. We're about to board a 14-hour flight. We need those cards. Catherine has meetings arranged with investors. Investors for what? I asked. Marcus doesn't even have a business plan. This is just another scam and you're falling for it again. Catherine stepped forward, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Listen to me, you ungrateful little office drone. I've spent weeks setting up these connections. Real money people who can change all our lives. If you ruin this opportunity, I'll make sure everyone in the family knows exactly what kind of selfish, jealous person you really are. I looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Go ahead. I'm done caring what any of you think of me. The check-in agent, now joined by a colleague, interjected again. I'm sorry, but we're showing payment issues with this booking. The business class upgrades have been declined, and there's a hold on the original economy tickets as well. Marcus spun around, his face red with fury. Fix it, he spat at me. Now. Number. The simple word felt like freedom. You can't do this to us. Marcus's voice rose again, echoing through the terminal. You can't strand us like this. Several airport security officers were now moving in our direction, drawn by the commotion. I'm not stranding you, I replied calmly. I'm just not funding you anymore. There's a difference. You think you're so much better than me because you have some pathetic coding job. Marcus was shouting now, beyond caring about appearances. You're nothing, a nobody. While I'm out creating things, taking risks. What exactly have you created? Marcus, name one successful thing you've built that wasn't funded by Dad and didn't collapse within months. He lunged at me again, only to be intercepted by a security officer. Sir, I need you to calm down immediately. Aunt Catherine quickly stepped in, switching to her charming social persona. Officer, this is just a little family disagreement. My nephews are having a moment. Ma'am, if your nephew can't control himself, we'll have to escort him from the terminal. Marcus shook off the officer's hand, straightening his jacket with exaggerated dignity. He pointed at me, his voice shaking with rage. You stranded us. The words echoed across the terminal, causing more heads to turn. Your own family. I met his gaze steadily. No, Marcus. You stranded yourselves when you decided to steal my trip and my money. Actions have consequences. Even for you. I stepped away from the check-in counter, needing space to process what had just happened. My hands were shaking as I found an empty row of seats near a window overlooking the tarmac. Outside, planes taxied across the runway, people going places, moving forward with their lives. I envied them their uncomplicated journeys. As I sat there, memories cascaded through my mind, a lifetime of being the responsible one, the overlooked one. I remembered my 16th birthday, when Dad forgot entirely because Marcus had a minor soccer injury. The graduation dinner where Aunt Catherine spent the entire evening discussing Marcus's entrepreneurial potential rather than my summa cum laude honors. The time I was hospitalized with appendicitis, and Dad visited just once because he was busy helping Marcus launch yet another doomed business venture. Each memory was a brick in the wall that had been building between us for years. I had always told myself that family was family, that maintaining these relationships was worth the constant dismissal of my achievements and needs. But was it? What had I actually received in return for my unfailing loyalty? Across the terminal, I could see the three of them huddled in intense conversation. Dad was on his phone, probably trying to sort out the payment issues. Marcus was gesticulating wildly, his face still flushed with anger. Aunt Catherine was typing furiously on her phone, likely spinning this story to other family members before I could explain my side. A young couple sat down nearby, leaning into each other with easy affection. The woman rested her head on the man's shoulder as he checked their boarding passes. Such a simple gesture, but it highlighted everything that was missing from my own family. Mutual respect, genuine support, love, without conditions or calculations of advantage. After 20 minutes of reflection, I stood up, decision made. I walked back to where my family was still arguing among themselves. I've thought about this, I announced, interrupting their heated discussion. And I'm not changing my mind. The cards stay frozen. Dad stepped forward, his expression shifting to one I recognized from childhood, the look that combined disappointment with emotional manipulation. Your mother would be so ashamed of you right now, Ethan. She always taught us that family comes first. The mention of my mother sent a sharp pain through my chest, but I stood my ground. Don't you dare use Mom to manipulate me. She taught us that family supports each other, not exploits each other. She would be ashamed of how you favored Marcus and ignored me my entire life. That's not true, Dad protested, but the flicker in his eyes told me he knew it was. It is true, I replied. And I think you know it. But that's not even the worst part of all this. Marcus, who had been unusually quiet, narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? I turned to Aunt Catherine. You're booked on this trip too, aren't you? That's why you're here with luggage. Her momentary hesitation confirmed my suspicion before she could formulate a denial. Let me guess. I continued, you were planning to use my hotel booking as well, the one with the 2-bedroom suite I splurged on for the resort portion of the trip. Catherine is essential for the networking opportunities Dad began. Stop, I interrupted. Just stop lying. This isn't about business opportunities. This is about a free luxury vacation at my expense. Marcus stepped forward. You're so dramatic. This was always going to benefit everyone. Once I secure investment. There is no investment opportunity, I shouted my patience, finally snapping. There never was. This is just another of your fantasies that Dad and Aunt Catherine indulge, because they can't face the reality that you've never succeeded at anything. The terminal seemed to go quiet around us, or perhaps it was just the blood rushing in my ears. How long have you been planning this? I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. The booking was changed yesterday, but this scheme must have been in the works longer. How long? The three of them exchanged glances, none willing to answer. How long, I repeated. 3 weeks, Dad finally admitted. Since you mentioned the resort at Sunday dinner. The betrayal cut deeper than I had imagined possible. For 3 weeks they had plotted behind my back, scheming to steal the vacation I had worked so hard for, planning to drain my finances for their benefit. 3 weeks, I echoed. 3 weeks of lying to my face while planning to steal from me. Not steal, Aunt Catherine interjected quickly. Reallocate resources to maximize family benefit. Call it whatever you want. It's over now. I stepped back from them physically and emotionally, creating distance. I'm done. Done with what, Dad asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Done being your backup plan. Done being Marcus's unwilling investor. Done being the family ATM with no thanks and no return. Just done. A security officer approached our group again. Folks, we've received complaints about the disturbance. I need to ask you to either proceed to your gate or exit the terminal. Marcus turned on the officer, his frustration finding a new target. Do you know who I am? I have investors waiting for me in Dubai. Business deals worth millions. The officer remained impassive. Sir, please lower your voice. Marcus did the opposite, his face reddening, as he launched into a tirade about his imaginary business empire and connections. The scene quickly escalated, with Marcus refusing to calm down, and Aunt Catherine attempting to film the security response, presumably to claim harassment later. Within minutes, additional officers arrived, and Marcus was being escorted toward the terminal exit, shouting threats and accusations the entire way. Dad hurried after them, casting one last pleading look in my direction. I stood alone, at the check-in counter, surrounded by the wreckage of what was supposed to be my dream vacation. The Emirates agent gave me a sympathetic look. Sir, would you like to reinstate your original booking? We could still get you on the flight if you hurry. I considered it for a moment, continuing with my plans despite everything. But the thought of spending 14 hours on a plane, stewing in anger and betrayal, followed by days alone in a city I had dreamed of, exploring in a state of happiness, not misery, made the decision clear. No thank you, I replied. I'll rebook for another time. As I turned to leave the airport, I felt simultaneously hollow and liberated. The vacation I had worked so hard for was gone, but something new had taken its place. The beginning of freedom from toxic family dynamics that had controlled my life for too long. The drive home from the airport felt surreal. Traffic on the Massachusetts Turnpike crawled at its usual pace. People commuted to their jobs, and life continued normally around me, while my world had just been fundamentally altered. I had left my apartment that morning as a man excitedly embarking on a dream vacation. I was returning as someone who had finally seen his family for what they truly were. I had just parked outside my apartment building when my phone rang. It was Alex, my best friend since college days. Dude, aren't you supposed to be somewhere over the Atlantic right now? He asked when I answered. It's a long story. My voice sounded tired even to my own ears. I've got time. Want me to come over? An hour later, Alex sat on my couch nursing a beer and shaking his head in disbelief as I finished recounting the morning's events. That's next-level manipulation, man, even for your family. Alex had witnessed enough of my family dynamics over the years to understand the pattern, but even he seemed shocked by this escalation. So, what are you going to do now? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a call from Rachel, my girlfriend of 8 months. I had texted her briefly from the airport, but hadn't explained everything. "Hey, I thought your flight was this morning," she said when I answered. "Is everything okay?" "Not really. Can you come over? I'm with Alex right now, but I could use your perspective too." Rachel arrived 30 minutes later, her face etched with concern. She listened intently as I recapped the airport confrontation, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "I always knew your dad favored Marcus, but this is beyond favoritism," she said when I finished. "This is emotional abuse, Ethan. And the credit card thing, that's actual fraud." "I know," I sighed. "I've been thinking about calling the credit card companies to report unauthorized use, but they're family." Alex finished for me, understanding my hesitation. Rachel took my hand. "Family doesn't do what they did, Ethan. You've spent years making excuses for their behavior, but there's no excuse for this." She was right. For as long as I could remember, I had rationalized their treatment of me. Dad was still grieving. Mom Marcus was struggling to find his path. Aunt Catherine was just old-fashioned in her values. I had become an expert in explaining away their disregard for my feelings and achievements. "I need to call the travel agency," I said, changing the subject slightly. "See if I can salvage anything from the bookings." I put the call on speaker, so Alex and Rachel could hear. The travel agent, a woman named Diane, listened with professional sympathy as I explained the situation in the vaguest terms possible. Family emergency canceled trip, wondering about refund options. "Let me look at your booking, Mr. Reynolds." I could hear her typing. "Oh, I see the issue. There was a passenger change yesterday evening, and then several upgrade charges that appear to have been declined this morning." "Can I reverse the passenger change?" I asked. "I'm afraid not at this point. The original booking is now in your brother's name, though. As I said, there are payment issues flagged on the account." She paused. "This is somewhat unusual. Would you like me to escalate this to my supervisor? There might be options we can explore given the circumstances." Something in her tone suggested she understood more than I was explicitly stating. "Yes, please. That would be helpful. I'll have someone call you back within the hour. And Mr. Reynolds, I'm very sorry about your situation. These family matters can be complicated." After hanging up, I sat in silence for a moment, processing. Rachel squeezed my hand. "You know what's crazy?" I finally said. "Part of me still feels guilty for freezing the cards, like I'm the one who did something wrong." "That's how manipulation works," Rachel replied. "They've conditioned you to prioritize their needs above your own for so long that setting a boundary feels like a transgression." My phone buzzed with a text from my boss, Stephanie. Normally, I wouldn't have bothered her about personal matters, but I had mentioned the Dubai trip in our last team meeting when discussing my upcoming time off. "Hey, thought you'd be on a plane by now. Everything okay?" I sent a brief reply. "Family emergency, had to cancel the trip. I'll be in the office tomorrow." Her response was immediate. "No, take the time off anyway. You've earned it. Whatever's happening, take care of yourself first. Team is covered." The simple message of support, so different from my family's attitude, brought an unexpected lump to my throat. "You should listen to her," Alex said, reading the exchange over my shoulder. "Take the time off. Process what happened. And see a therapist," Rachel added. "I'm serious, Ethan. This kind of family dynamic doesn't develop overnight, and it won't be resolved overnight either." She was right again. The airport confrontation wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of imbalanced relationships and blurred boundaries. That evening, after Alex and Rachel left with promises to check in the next day, I began researching family therapists in the Boston area. I found one specializing in adult family dynamics and sent an email requesting an emergency appointment. Next, I called my bank and had a long conversation with their fraud department. Though I didn't file formal charges, I removed Marcus as an authorized user on all accounts and placed additional security measures on all my finances. Then I called a locksmith to change the locks on my apartment. I had given Dad a spare key years ago for emergencies, and I suddenly didn't trust him not to use it. As I scrolled through my phone contacts, I realized how many family members I would need to establish boundaries with, not just Dad Marcus and Aunt Catherine, but the extended family network, who would inevitably be drawn into the drama once. Catherine began spreading her version of events. I drafted, but didn't send a simple text to my father. I need time and space to process what happened today. Please respect that by not contacting me for a while. My finger hovered over the send button, but I hesitated. Part of me still craved his approval, still hoped for acknowledgement that what they had done was wrong. But I knew that message would likely trigger another wave of manipulation and guilt rather than genuine reflection. Instead, I called my father's lawyer, a man named Robert, who had handled our family's legal matters since I was a child. I explained the situation as objectively as possible and asked about protective measures I should consider. Frankly, Ethan, I'm troubled by what you're describing, Robert said. I've known your family for many years, but what you're describing crosses several legal and ethical lines. He recommended documenting everything, maintaining records of the unauthorized credit card access, and considering a temporary restraining order if the situation escalated further. Has your father tried to access any of your other accounts? He asked. Not that I know of, but I wouldn't have thought he'd access my travel bookings either. Check everything, Robert advised. Investment accounts, retirement funds, property documents. Leave no stone unturned. The conversation left me feeling simultaneously more secure and more violated. What other aspects of my life had they felt entitled to control or exploit? As midnight approached, I sat on my balcony, looking out at the Boston skyline, contemplating what to do with the time I had taken off work. The thought of staying in my apartment fielding calls and texts from family members demanding explanations, or trying to manipulate me into changing my mind, was unbearable. I opened my laptop and began searching for alternative trips. Not to replace Dubai, but to create something new. Something that represented not just a vacation, but a declaration of independence. Within an hour, I had found a reasonably priced package to Costa Rica, a destination I had always been curious about, but had never prioritized. The booking page asked how many travelers. For a moment, I hesitated, wondering if I should invite Rachel or Alex to join me. But no, this trip needed to be just for me. A statement that I could enjoy life on my own terms, without seeking anyone else's approval or validation. I completed the booking, a weight lifting from my shoulders, as the confirmation appeared on screen. This wasn't the trip I had planned, but perhaps it was the trip I needed, a journey not just to a new destination, but toward a new understanding of myself and what I would and would not accept from the people in my life. 1 week into what should have been my Dubai vacation, I was hiking through a Costa Rican rainforest when my phone buzzed with an international call. I had been deliberately limiting my phone use, checking in only occasionally at the Eco Lodge where I was staying, but something told me to answer this one. Ethan, thank God. My father's voice sounded strained, desperate. We need your help. I stopped on the trail, signaling to my guide that I needed a moment. What's happened? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. It's a complete disaster, Dad said. Marcus has spent all our money. The hotel is threatening to call the police if we don't pay the bill. Catherine left 2 days ago after a huge fight. We're stranded, son. I closed my eyes, taking in the sounds of the forest around me. Birds calling, insects, buzzing, life continuing, regardless of human drama. I'm sorry to hear that, I said finally. But I don't see how I can help from Costa Rica. Costa Rica. What are you doing there? Taking the vacation time I had already scheduled. Just not in Dubai. There was a pause. Ethan, please. We need you to wire money for the hotel bill and flights home. Just this once, and I promise we'll pay you back. The familiarity of the request, the emergency, the promise of repayment that would never materialize, was almost laughable now that I had some distance from it. What happened exactly? I asked. Dad sighed heavily. Marcus. He got carried away. Said he was networking, making connections. Charged everything to the room. Champagne for people he met at the hotel bar, desert excursions, shopping trips. The bill is over $15,000. And then Catherine? She got fed up with his behavior and just left. Said she couldn't be associated with such amateur moves in front of potential investors. Were there actual investors, Dad? Or was that always just a story? His silence was answer enough. Marcus is in the bathroom having a complete meltdown. Dad continued eventually. He's been posting all kinds of accusations online, saying you abandoned us, that you're jealous of his potential. I've tried to get him to stop, but he won't listen to me anymore. I pulled out my water bottle and took a sip, giving myself time to process. I'm not responsible for Marcus's choices, Dad. Or yours. I made it very clear at the airport what would happen if you went through with this plan. I know. But we're talking about serious consequences here. The hotel manager mentioned potential arrest for fraud if we can't pay. We could be stuck here for weeks, dealing with Dubai authorities. I don't know their legal system, Ethan. I'm scared. Part of me, the people-pleasing part that had always sought my father's approval, wanted to give in to rescue them one more time. But I recognized the pattern now, and I knew that helping would only reinforce the dynamic that had brought us to this point. I understand you're in a difficult situation, I said carefully, but I can't keep rescuing Marcus from his own choices, and I can't keep letting you enable him at my expense. So you're just going to leave us here. The desperation in his voice was edged with anger now. Your own family. You have options, Dad. Call the American embassy. Explain the situation to the hotel manager and work out a payment plan. Sell your watch or Marcus's designer clothes. Contact one of your business associates for help. None of those people will help us. And why do you think that is? I asked quietly. The line went silent again. Dad, I have to go. My tour group is waiting. I hope you find a solution, but it can't come from me this time. I hung up before he could respond, my hand shaking slightly. My guide looked at me with concern. Everything okay, senor? Yes, I said, surprised to find that it was true. Everything is fine. Back at the lodge that evening, I allowed myself to check social media. As Dad had warned, Marcus had been on a posting spree, long rambling accounts of how I had abandoned them in a foreign country out of jealousy and spite. He had tagged family members, mutual friends, even my employer. Most concerning were the direct messages he had sent to Rachel, attempting to turn her against me with twisted versions of childhood anecdotes meant to paint me as chronically jealous and vindictive. I called her immediately. I'm so sorry you got dragged into this. Don't apologize, she said firmly. His messages just confirmed everything you've been saying for months about your family dynamics. Actually, several of your friends have reached out to check on you after seeing his posts. They're concerned, but not for the reasons Marcus hoped. Indeed, my phone had several supportive messages from friends and colleagues who had seen through Marcus's narrative. My boss, Stephanie, had sent a particularly direct email, saw your brother's concerning posts. Don't worry about work implications. We know who you are. Take care of yourself. I spent the next hour responding to messages of support, touched by how many people in my life saw the situation clearly, even through Marcus's attempts at manipulation. The following morning, I met with the lodge's manager to use their business center. I needed to address one final aspect of the situation, ensuring my long-term financial protection from my family's potential future attempts at exploitation. I called Robert, my father's lawyer, expecting to leave a message. To my surprise, he answered personally. Ethan, I've been hoping to hear from you. Your father called me yesterday. Let me guess. He wanted money. Actually, he wanted me to explain how he could access your investment accounts in an emergency. I declined to assist, of course, but it raised red flags. I felt a chill despite the tropical heat. I need to protect myself, Robert. What do you recommend? We spent the next hour discussing legal safeguards, changing account beneficiaries, creating a limited power of attorney for a trusted friend in case of actual emergencies, and documenting the pattern of financial exploitation. Robert also strongly recommended I consult an independent lawyer, acknowledging his long history with my father created potential conflicts of interest. For what it's worth, he said before hanging up. I've watched you grow up, Ethan. You've always been the responsible one, the steady one. What your family is doing isn't right. Don't let guilt cloud your judgment. Coming from my father's longtime lawyer, the validation meant more than I expected. That afternoon, as I sat on the beach watching the Pacific waves, I made a decision about my original Dubai savings. The money was still in my account, minus the Costa Rica expenses. I could hold on to it for another attempt at my dream trip, but that felt too connected to the painful experience. Instead, I decided to divide it 3 ways. 1/3 for a professional development course I'd been eyeing but had deemed too expensive. 1/3 for a weekend trip with Rachel to celebrate her upcoming birthday, and 1/3 for a fancial camping adventure with Alex and our college friends. Investments in the healthy, supportive relationships in my life. As I completed the bookings that evening, my phone pinged with a news alert. American tourists detained in Dubai over unpaid hotel bills. The article didn't name names, but I knew. Somehow, knowing that natural consequences had finally caught up with Marcus and my father didn't bring the satisfaction I might have expected. Instead, I felt a complex mix of sadness for the situation and relief that I was no longer responsible for fixing it. Everything happens for a reason, my father had said cryptically the night before my planned departure. He had been right, though not in the way he intended. This painful episode had forced me to confront the unhealthy family dynamic I had enabled for too long and take the first steps toward genuine freedom. I sent one last text before turning off my phone for the night, not to my father or Marcus, but to myself, a promise for the future. Your worth isn't measured by what you can give others, but by the boundaries you set to protect your peace. 6 months after the Dubai incident, I sat in my therapist Dr. Levine's office for what we had agreed would be our final regular session. Through weekly meetings, we had unpacked a lifetime of family conditioning and worked through the complex emotions surrounding my decision to establish firm boundaries with my father and brother. "How do you feel about where you are now, compared to when we started, Doctor?" Levine asked, her expression thoughtful, as she observed me across the comfortably worn coffee table that separated our chairs. I considered the question carefully, like I'm finally the author of my own story, not a supporting character in someone else's. She nodded, clearly pleased with the metaphor. "And how are the boundaries working?" The boundaries had been the most challenging part of the healing process. After returning from Costa Rica, I had maintained limited structured contact with my father and brother. They had eventually made their way back from Dubai. The American embassy had intervened, and Dad had been forced to liquidate some investments to cover their hotel bills and fines. "The boundaries are holding," I replied. "Dad still tests them occasionally, but less than before. I think he's starting to understand. This is permanent. We talk once a month by phone with clear time limits. He's not allowed to discuss Marcus's financial situations or business opportunities with me. And Marcus. We're essentially no contact, which has been better for both of us, honestly. He's still stuck in his cycle, but now without me as a safety net. Dad's still bailing him out, but on a much smaller scale than before. I think losing access to my resources has forced some minor reality checks." Marcus's latest venture, a cryptocurrency for dog lovers called Pupcoin, had predictably failed within months. But unlike before, when such failures would prompt family-wide emergency response, I had remained detached, observing from a distance rather than being pulled into the drama. "And your aunt?" Dr. Levine asked. "Catherine has mostly disappeared from the picture since she can't use me to fund her lifestyle anymore. Last I heard, she's latched onto a distant cousin who made money in real estate." I smiled wryly. Poor guy doesn't know what he's in for. Dr. Levine made a few notes before looking up again. "You mentioned planning a trip with Rachel. Dubai." "No, actually. We're going to Japan in the spring. Dubai doesn't hold the same appeal anymore. Maybe someday. But for now, I'm excited about creating new dreams rather than chasing old ones." The alternative trip I had taken to Costa Rica had proven far more meaningful than I could have anticipated. Instead of luxury hotels and urban exploration, I had experienced ecological wonders, connected with fellow travelers with similar values, and discovered a passion for wildlife photography. The simplicity of eco-lodge living had also provided perspective on what truly constituted luxury: peace of mind, authentic connections, and freedom from toxic expectations. "And how are things with Rachel?" Dr. Levine asked. "Better than ever," I replied, unable to suppress a smile. Seeing how she stood by me through all of this, how clearly she saw the situation when I was still doubting myself, It deepened our relationship in ways I hadn't expected. We're talking about moving in together after the Japan trip. Rachel had been my rock during the most difficult phases of establishing boundaries, especially when extended family members influenced by Marcus and Catherine's narrative had tried to pressure me into reconciliation without accountability. She had helped me craft responses that were firm but not cruel, maintaining my boundaries without unnecessary conflict. What about your career? Any changes there? This was perhaps the most surprising positive outcome of the entire ordeal. Actually, yes. After everything happened, I had a long talk with my boss about work-life balance and feeling valued. She connected me with the company's mentorship program, and I've been working with our CTO on developing my leadership skills. I got promoted last month to team lead. Dr. Levine smiled. It sounds like the energy you used to spend managing your family's crises is now being directed toward your own growth. Exactly. I never realized how much mental and emotional bandwidth they were consuming until I reclaimed it. We spent the remainder of the session discussing maintenance strategies, how to sustain healthy boundaries, recognize early warning signs of slipping into old patterns, and continue building a support network that reinforced my well-being rather than undermining it. As our session concluded, Dr. Levine offered a final observation. Ethan, when you first came to me, you framed your story as one of loss. The lost trip the family conflicts. Now you're framing it as a story of discovery and growth. That shift in perspective is perhaps the most significant healing of all. After leaving her office, I walked through the Boston Common, enjoying the crisp autumn air. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex confirming our weekend camping plans. The third such trip since Costa Rica had awakened my appreciation for outdoor adventures. I stopped at a coffee shop and found a quiet corner table. Opening my laptop, I pulled up the photo album from Costa Rica. The vibrant wildlife, the breathtaking landscapes, and most importantly, the series of selfies showing my expression changing over the course of the trip, from strained, genuinely peaceful. Another text message came through, this one from my father, thinking of you. Sunday dinner this weekend. Marcus has news. 6 months ago, such a message would have triggered immediate anxiety and guilt. Now I could read it with emotional detachment, recognizing it for what it was. An attempt to draw me back into the old pattern without acknowledging how that pattern had harmed me. I composed a polite but firm decline, reminding him of our agreement to connect by phone on our scheduled day the following week. No justifications, no apologies, just a clear boundary. As I closed my laptop, I noticed a young man at a nearby table having an intense phone conversation, his body language screaming discomfort and stress as he repeatedly said, "Yes, Dad, I know, but..." I recognized that posture, that tone, that trapped expression. It was like looking at a mirror image of my former self. When he hung up sighing heavily and staring into his untouched coffee, I felt a momentary urge to approach him to share what I had learned about family dynamics and boundaries. But everyone's journey is their own, and unsolicited advice rarely helps. Instead, I finished my coffee and headed home to my apartment, the space that had become a true sanctuary since I had changed the locks and established it as boundary-protected territory. Rachel would be coming over later for dinner, and Alex had promised to call with updates about a potential job opportunity he'd heard about that aligned perfectly with my skills. The Dubai trip that never happened had cost me $2,870 and nearly broke my spirit. But what I had gained in its place was beyond price: self-respect, healthy boundaries, and the freedom to build a life based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Sometimes the most important journeys have nothing to do with boarding planes or crossing oceans. Sometimes they're about crossing the harder terrain within ourselves, from who we were conditioned to be to who we choose to become. I hope this story resonates with those of you who have struggled with similar family dynamics. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? What helped you find the strength to prioritize your well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it spoke to you. Remember, creating a healthy life sometimes means redefining what family truly means. Thank you for listening, and I wish you courage on your own journey toward peace and self-respect.